The Cop and the Anthem. On the bench in Madison Square, New York, Soapy moved uneasily, and when Soapy moves uneasily on his bench in the park, you may know that winter is at hand. Soapy had no apartment and no job. He didn't even try to find it. For 9 months of the year it was warm and he was happy. But then came the first week of December. A dead leaf fell on Soapy's leg. That was Jack Frost's card. He warned the inhabitants of Madison Square to get ready. Soapy understood that the time had come for him to defend himself against the coming cold. His ambitions were not high. He didn't dream of the Mediterranean cruises. 3 months in jail was all that he wanted. There he could have a little food, a bed, safe from the winter and cold. There were many easy ways of doing this. The best was to have dinner at some expensive restaurant, and then to say he couldn't pay. Then the cop will arrest him and send him to the island. Soapy left his bench and walked out of the square up to Broadway. He stopped at an expensive restaurant. But as he set foot inside, the waiter's eye fell upon his shabby trousers and broken shoes. Strong hands turned him around in silence to the sidewalk. Soapy turned off Broadway. Some other way of entering must be thought of. At a corner of 6th Avenue, his attention was attracted by bright lights behind a glass shop window of a fashionable store. Soapy took a stone and threw it through the glass. People came running around the corner, a policeman in the lead. Soapy stood still, with his hands in his pockets, and smiled. "Where's the man that has done that?" inquired the officer. "Do you think that I can have something to do with it?" said Soapy, not without sarcasm, but friendly. The policeman didn't even speak to him. Men who break windows don't stand and talk with policemen. They run away. At that moment, the policeman saw a man running to catch a bus. With a drawn club, he ran after him. No jail for Soapy that afternoon. On the opposite side of the street was a cafe of no great pretensions. Soapy took his shoes into this place. He sat at a table and ate a beefsteak, donuts, and a big apple pie. Then he told the waiter that he couldn't pay for the meal. "Call a cop," said Soapy, "and don't keep a gentleman waiting." "No cop for you," said the waiter with an icy voice. "Hey, Connie!" 2 waiters seized Soapy and threw him out of the restaurant. In a moment, Soapy found himself on the pavement, not on his feet, but on his left ear. He stood up and dusted his clothes. Arrest seemed a rosy dream. The island seemed very far away. A policeman who stood before a drugstore 2 doors away laughed and walked down the street. In the evening, Soapy went to a street where many theaters were located. Women in furs and men in coats moved gaily in the cold air. A policeman was walking grandly in front of one of the theaters. A thought struck Soapy. He began to shout drunken gibberish at the top of his voice. He sang, danced, and made a lot of noise, hoping to be arrested for disorderly conduct. The policeman turned his back to Soapy and remarked to the people, "This fellow is one of the students of a theater school. They are noisy but do no harm. We have instructions not to touch them." Soapy buttoned his coat against the chilling wind. In a cigar store, he saw a well-dressed man smoking a cigar at the window. He had put his silk umbrella by the door on entering. Soapy stepped inside, took the umbrella, and walked off with it slowly. The man saw him and followed him. "It's my umbrella!" he shouted. "Oh, is it?" smiled Soapy. "Well, why don't you call a cop? There stands one on the corner." The umbrella owner lowered his steps. Soapy did the same. The policeman looked at them curiously. Of course, said the umbrella man. That is, well, you know how these mistakes occur. If it's your umbrella, I hope you'll excuse me. I picked it up this morning in a restaurant. If you recognize it as yours, why, I hope you'll—" He quickly walked away. The policeman hurried to assist a tall blonde to cross the street. Soapy walked eastward, muttering bad words against the men carrying clubs. Soapy went toward Madison Square, for the homing instinct is strong even when the home is a park bench. But on an unusually quiet corner he stopped. Here was an old church. Through one violet-stained window, a soft light glowed, and the beautiful music of an organ reached Soapy's ears. The anthem that the organist played cemented Soapy to the iron fence, for he had known it well in the days when his life contained such things as home and a job and snow-white shirts and ambitions and friends. These recollections produced a sudden and wonderful change in his soul. He saw with horror the pit in which he had fallen, his dead hopes and ruined life. And in a moment his heart responded to this new mood. A strong impulse made him try to change his unhappy life. He will make a man of himself again. There was time. He was still comparatively young. He will find work. He was once offered a place of a driver. Tomorrow he will find this man and ask him for a job. He will be somebody in the world. He will— Soapy felt a hand on his arm. He turned quickly around and looked into the rude face of a policeman. "What are you doing here?" asked the officer. "Nothing," said Soapy. "Where do you live?" "Nowhere," said Soapy. "Then come along," said the policeman. 3 months on the island for tramping," said the judge in the police court the next morning.